Coming up, underwater autonomy.
Our belief is that by enabling learning in that constrained way, then the system will become better at doing what it does. And so we'll be able to relax the constraints and give it more decision authority over time.
Adding robotic arms to wheelchairs.
Instead of having me move every joint and have to do all of that thinking, the robot does some of the thinking for me.
A soft feature for hard robots.
So you could have a simple on and off kind of sensor to actuate a soft robot.
Funding for this program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Sue and Edgar Wackenheim III, and contributions to this station.
Hi, I'm Mike Zeman. Thanks for watching SciTech Now. A group at Penn State is trying to build an autonomous system that can operate underwater. It's an unforgiving environment that is pushing this technology into new territory. Producer Bill Hallman has the story.
By now, you've probably guessed that this is no ordinary boat trip. And this is no toy. It's called an IVER, an autonomous underwater vehicle. But members of the Applied Research Lab at Penn State aren't really working on the vehicle. They're more concerned with its mind.
So we're going to have it drive on the surface initially at a 50-degree heading, and when it picks up speed, then we're going to start diving. It's going to hold a 7-degree downward pitch until it reaches its target depth, and then it's going to level out and try to maintain that depth.
The team, led by John Sustersick, wants to build a self-driving submarine. But this project is a little more complicated than that.
We're trying to develop an autonomous system, an unmanned system that can interact with people as well as a manned system would. And so the number of technical and theoretical challenges that have to be overcome there is pretty big.
The system is called MANTA, Multi-Agent Architecture for Natural and Trusted Autonomy. Let's start with the multi-agent part first. It's built to mimic the command structure of an actual submarine. There's a commanding officer, a navigator, officer of the deck, a pilot, and an engineer. And these autonomous agents, or computer programs, use the same language that you would hear on a sub. So when the officer of the deck tells the pilot to dive, it uses the word dive.
By allowing the agents to interact via natural language, then an outsider observing the operation of the system will understand the high-level decision-making that's in play. And really, we can have humans intermixed with the autonomous agents. So you could have a human commanding officer issuing orders to the rest of the autonomous team.
That's the ultimate goal, a trusted autonomous system that can operate without any humans or just a few. To build it, Sustersick built a diverse team, one that includes engineers, programmers, and a mathematician.
Most of what I'm looking at has to do with the learning aspect. We have right now an entire architecture devoted to logic, right? But if you really think about what makes an organism robust in a situation, one of the most important components is that it's adaptable. And that adaptability requires learning. What I'm thinking about is how do we take in sort of the raw data of the world and how do we learn from it so that we have a platform that can adjust to novel circumstances.
It's a problem Sustersick compares to teaching a teenager how to drive. Safety comes with experience.
Our belief is that by enabling learning in that constrained way, then the system will become better at doing what it does. And so we'll be able to relax the constraints and give it more decision authority over time, in which way we keep everyone happy.
At the lake, the team sets clear constraints and objectives before any mission begins.
I'm gonna come back up, get a GPS fix, come back around on parallel reverse course, and take another swath of imagery.
The results can be checked and tweaked on site. They can also be duplicated in the lab using a popular video game engine.
So this is our Manta simulator. It is actually a two-part simulator. All we do is put it in the environment, and we have the SOAR agents command what our vehicle is doing, and we can see real-time what it looks like. And we also have a visualizer, which takes in data from physical tests, like the ones out of the lake, and we can put that data in here and actually replay the mission that took place out there on a screen.
This continual testing is vital to developing agents capable of completing complex tasks and building the trust needed for human interaction.
So many of the challenges that the autonomous system has to face is it safe to go here? How much risk do I assume if I take this particular path versus that particular path? Those are the things that people are doing all the time, and things that the system needs to demonstrate to people's satisfaction that it will make reasonable decisions.
When you think about computers, they are part of a long line of technology that's designed to do all the things that humans are bad at. They're designed to record information perfectly. They're designed to compute very quickly. But the current age of technology is interested in doing the things that humans are good at. It's sort of working with fuzzy information. It's transferring knowledge from one domain to another.
And when it comes to that transfer, the team at ARL is just beginning to scratch the surface.
For military medicine, the mission to save lives is also a mission to make lives better. This new frontier is advancing in laboratories, hospitals, and universities across the country, including a unique engineering and research center in Pittsburgh.
At the Human Engineering Research Laboratories at the University of Pittsburgh, engineers and designers imagine and manufacture devices that make independent living easier for anyone with a disability.
It's easier if you do an open grip on the door because it kind of comes with you.
Sure. The laboratory's logo gives the Pittsburgh Panther mascot wheels because wheelchairs are the main focus.
You do wheelchairs and robotics and prosthetics and cognitive aids and wireless technologies, virtual reality.
It's here that the lab's director, Rory Cooper, combines his PhD in engineering and his personal experience as a disabled veteran. Cooper was an Army sergeant stationed in Germany in 1980 when he was hit by a truck while bicycling to his base, leaving him paralyzed below the waist. Determined to make a difference for all disabled veterans, Cooper decided to study engineering and began building better wheelchairs. He took up racing, won a bronze medal in the Paralympic Games in 1988, and still competes. His current challenge, making wheelchairs with robotic arms.
Some people that use wheelchairs, they have limited use of their upper extremities or their arms as well as their legs.
The first designs used keyboards and then joysticks to control the arms. And now there's an app for that.
So this makes it a lot more intuitive, especially because people are already used to using phones and tablets. I'm just saying up or down, but if all the joints are moving in synchrony in order to move me up and down. So the robot's thinking, Rory wants the bottle to go down, and it's how do I need to move the joints to do down? So in a sense, we're sharing the control. The robot is doing part of the control, and I'm doing part of the control. So I'll just go up again. If you watch, you'll see that the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist are all moving. So it's doing those calculations. Instead of having me move every joint and have to do all of that thinking, the robot does some of the thinking for me.
To build and manage these complex robots and devices, Cooper makes sure there are veterans and wheelchair users involved at every level.
What we've tried to do is bring all the disciplines together, so physicians and engineers and therapists, and include veterans and people with disabilities, and bring them into those professions, and use technology to, as much as possible, ameliorate the disability but also promote full inclusion, full participation in society, in every aspect of society.
This is the Mobility Enhancement Robotic Wheelchair, or MEBot.
Graduate student Andrea Sundaram is working with Cooper on the MEBot, a powered wheelchair that can keep the seat level while navigating steps or uneven ground.
What we tried to do is to make a wheelchair that can go everywhere that current wheelchairs can go, and then go places where they can't.
The self-leveling chair may mean both better and safer mobility.
They had 100,000 reports of emergency room visits by wheelchair users in a single year. 65 to 80% of those visits are attributed to tips and falls.
That's what happens when you have a war. Medicine starts sort of at one place, and it rapidly has to evolve to another place. And for us in rehab, it was the same way. The trauma surgeons and the acute care surgeons, they figured out how to keep a lot of people alive that wouldn't have normally stayed alive before. And then that gave us in rehab the obligation to help them maximize their function and return to participation.
That was an excerpt from the documentary Military Medicine Beyond the Battlefield. To watch the full film, visit pbs.org/militarymedicine.
Today's technology has taken robots out of the factory and integrated them into the world around us to serve as medical devices, prosthetics, and even to replace humans in the workplace. While traditional robots are typically made of hard mechanical parts, a new trend in robotics is emerging to create durable and malleable robots using soft materials that conform to the human body. Kyrie Love, soft goods engineer at robotics company Super Releaser, joins us now. So first, what are soft robotics?
So I think you did a wonderful introduction to start with. So when we think about soft robotics, we often place it in direct contrast to traditional robotics, in which almost all of the components are hard. Whereas in soft robotics, and also in hybrid robotics, a lot of the main components are made of soft things. So soft things could be things like silicone, fabrics, or it could be things like actual cells. So soft robotics is a very broad field in terms of what it means. It could be any soft component.
So what defines a robot?
I like to take robots very much back to the basics and to look at them as something that can do a complex series of events that do work primarily, and also that use computer control.
Okay, so what are the examples that you have here? Now,
the examples I have here aren't computer controlled. They are just physical embodiments of soft actuators. So this is a gripper. A gripper is a very classic example of why you would want a soft robot. Hard robots that are grippers can only interact usually with things that are the same and are durable. But say you wanted to interact with something like a tomato, or you wanted to interact with lots of different kinds of objects. A hard robot would have to have a lot of sensors and a lot of complexity to be able to handle those things. Whereas you could have a simple on and off kind of sensor to actuate a soft robot.
So that looks like just a blood pressure cuff that we see in the
This is.
doctor's
So
office.
if this were computer controlled, you can hook it up to a computer controlled valve that has air pressure. But this is just a hand demonstration.
Great. So it could squeeze a tomato without crushing it, whereas you really have to teach a mechanical robot exactly the right pressure, and and it's probably going to have several spoiled tomatoes in the process.
Yes. And then I brought this other gripper as well. So this gripper is interesting because it gets its ability to bend from the form that it has, whereas this is one that has a very simple shape, but it has fabric embedded inside, and that's what allows it to conform to a different shape. So these are two kinds of soft actuators that make the same motion, but through a different sort of mechanic.
And so do you see soft and hard robots kind of working in tandem?
I think that when we talk about soft robotic research, we're talking about very early stages of research right now. And so a lot of the most interesting research and the most useful to building out a library of possible mechanisms is very early. But we will see the fastest gains maybe in the hybrid robotic space, where you use maybe half hard components and half soft components. When we look at our own bodies, we are soft and hard together. We're held in tension, and we are utilizing all of these soft components to make us move.
Right, so give me some examples. I mean, how would, say, NASA use a soft robot in the future?
So NASA is a great case because of the extreme environment. There's a lot more call for kind of these early research phases. So one thing that Super Releaser was lucky enough to work on was as a subcontract for Final Frontier Design on a NASA contract to work on a mechanical counterpressure concept. So mechanical counterpressure is where instead of creating a bubble of air around an astronaut to protect them from the vacuum of space, you can provide physical pressure directly onto the body. Another area in which NASA is very interested in utilizing soft components is for rovers. So, for example, if you have a rover that is going to be underneath an ocean, so here on Earth, most sea life is soft because the pressure of the water on it is such that a soft component is more durable and flexible in that space. Another example in terms of the rover space is, say you want to land a rover on a place where there's no atmosphere. Our traditional use of something like a parachute isn't functional there. So if you can make a robot that can bounce when it hits the surface, you don't need the atmosphere to slow its descent.
So when you send an astronaut and have pressure right on their skin, so the space suit would be almost a soft robot that they're wearing that would continue to regulate the pressure around them.
Yes, there is a concept where it would be passive, but the thing is, as you move, your body shape changes. So an active system would be able to apply more even pressure.
Okay, so besides NASA, do you see this changing the assembly lines of what we consider the world of robots today?
Yeah, a lot of the companies that are working on developing, putting this directly into the field are interested in robotic grippers, either like the one I showed that is pneumatic and bends, or utilize vacuum. They're called jamming grippers. So they have a bunch of loose particles that when the particles get under vacuum, they harden. So you can conform around something and then suck the air out, and that allows you to pick it up.
So what's the thing that you're looking forward to 5 years out, 10 years out, that you think, well, it's just this one or two other things happen, soft robots could really get to the next level?
I think that the thing that I am most excited about is actually the medical space. Because as I mentioned, there are soft robots that are made out of cells. So that is something that could do all kinds of medical work inside of your body. There is work on edible robotics, and the focus on that is that if you had something that was in your stomach, you could swallow the robot, and then it could do work. An example of that was there's a robot that's focused on getting watch batteries out of people's stomachs, which apparently this is a problem. People are swallowing watch batteries.
Okay.
But there are all kinds of ways in which soft robotics could revolutionize the way we do work.
All right, Carrie Love, Super Releaser. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you.
There's an increased need for more skilled workers in the tech industry. To bridge the gap, colleges are working with employers to form an innovative and intensive 3-year apprenticeship program. Here's a look.
My name is Ian Costu, and I work for Heller Machine Tools. My day begins about 6:30 in the morning when I arrive here. Usually start going over what we've got to do for the day with whoever I'm working with. A lot of it is troubleshooting, machine building, wiring, picking things up and putting them down. That's kind of the common saying around here. So a lot of the machines we get come in large pieces, and we're able to just bolt them together, wire them together, and use them. When I first started here, something that really caught my attention was just the sheer scale and size of what we work on. So seeing a big project come together after 3 or 4 months of working on it is really cool, being able to flip the switch and run the thing. but personally I really enjoy troubleshooting. So if we get a problem with the machine, that's when I actually get to work. So say it's not functioning or not running this part correctly, why is that? What switches are faulting out, what programs aren't operating? And you can spend a half hour at fixing it, and you can spend half a day at fixing it, you don't know. So, and that's what keeps it interesting. MAT Squared, that stands for Michigan Advanced Technicians Training. MAT Squared begins at the high school level. We fill out job applications just like normal working people do, and we go to career fairs and we interview with a bunch of companies. So for me, what prepared me was my technical education. I went to Oakland School's technical campus for 2 years during high school, got some training in robotics and electronics, and did some really cool projects, at least at the high school level. And when I brought that here to Heller and the management saw that, they said, hey, here's somebody we can invest in and put training into. So part of the benefits from MAT Squared is that we were employees from day one. And to begin with the program, we started with a double school session, so we spent 4 months from September to December, like a standard school term. The apprenticeship allows me to actually see what I'm doing in my college classes used in real life. And it's much easier to learn by doing and seeing someone do a process or put together a machine, instead of just learning it on a piece of paper or in a book and then trying to apply it to class. A lot of the classes we took in MAT Squared were very technical based courses, especially when we started out, because they wanted to get us moving forward in the program so we would actually be useful employees when we came to work. And depending on which employee hires you, their practices are different, but here at Heller, we jumped straight into it. And my boss put us with other employees who are building machines and say, hey, go learn from this guy. Now that I've graduated, I've got skills that I can use and jobs that I can do. I get calls occasionally from my old mentors or high school instructors, or a lot of times it's people from the tech campus saying, hey, we have an event, can you come speak? Can you come try and encourage these students to push forward in these career paths? Because a lot of these technical campuses are incredibly well funded by the state, but they're not at capacity. A big push that I have anytime I go to speak is getting people to understand that these are real technical, important jobs that need to be filled. We've got engineers, we've got designers, we have the high-level people, the managers to put everything together, but if we don't have anybody to build it and to actually do it, then we're not going to have a functioning economy. A big piece of advice I would give to high school students is to get involved with your technical campuses, whether it's a robotics program that your school has or a full-blown technical campus like I had. That is the biggest and easiest way to get in these types of careers. It's not the down and dirty work that it used to be or that it's seen to be. It's real technical work. And in all honesty, I'm seeing where my four-year colleagues are going, and I'm in reality ahead of them because of this path that I chose.
Anissa Ramirez is a scientist, author, and self-proclaimed science evangelist. She's calling for big changes in science education and is the creator of a podcast series called Science Underground. Here to discuss one of her latest podcast episodes called Helping Ketchup Hurry Up is Anissa Ramirez. So the science of ketchup.
It takes so long to come out of the bottle, right?
Yes.
I mean, they've even had songs like Anticipation. Why does it take so long? Well, if we understand what makes up the ketchup, we'll know why. Ketchup is made of vinegar, sugar, spices, and pulverized tomato pieces. Okay. And they can't get past each other. So they need help. And the way that we can help it is the first thing we could do is we can shake it up.
Right. Everybody does that.
Everybody does that. But the other thing we can do is that we can force it. So if we get the ketchup, we put it at 45 degrees and use our hand and do this chopping form, comes right out.
I've always heard it's, hit it at a 45 on the 57.
On the 57, that's right. And the reason why we do that, the science behind that is because ketchup is what they call a yield stress thixotropic fluid.
Wow, that sounds so nerdy.
And all that means is that the yield stress means that it needs a force in order for it to move.
Okay.
And the thixotropic means that it has a memory. The particles are arranged in a random way. And if someone uses it and another person uses it, it will be easier for the second person because they're no longer in that random structure. They kind of are able to flow past each other like a school of fish.
So really, they did do the work for you.
They did do the work for you. So you should, but always be the second person when you get the ketchup bottle, and it will flow right out.
What are other fluids like this?
So thixotropic materials are kind of rare. Like the ink inside of a space pen is thixotropic. It's solid and then it's a fluid. But yield stress materials, mayonnaise is a yield stress material. If you get mayonnaise and you scoop it out, you put it in the refrigerator, you come back, that scoop is still there. If it were a liquid like honey, it would flow, it would recover. You would never see that divot.
Right.
But mayonnaise, you see that scoop and it'll stay there for a long time. So there are other materials, and blood is also a yield stress material.
So how do they think about this kind of effect and this kind of just really the science behind this when you think about medical research or when you think about any kind of scientific research?
Well, actually, it's still very much an open question about how ketchup behaves. There are a lot of mathematicians still working on it, how the particles, the tomato particles, are being moved. But if they can figure it out, it gives us a better way to process foods, like large-scale vats of foods. How do we make sure that it moves through nozzles in a uniform way? Also, could be used to control if we have an oil spill. If we have special smart liquids that thicken in certain ways, we can control where these spills go. So that's why scientists are working on these crazy yield stress thixotropic materials.
What's happening on a granular level? I mean, if we took a microscope or even something more powerful, how would we see all of these chunks of tomato and vinegar and whatever else, the special 57 ingredients in there?
57 varieties. Yeah. Well, it's the tomato pieces are randomly arranged. They're all over the place. And when I shake it, the tomato pieces elongate a little bit, but then they also form this kind of channel, if you will, where they all kind of are in one direction. So when I turn it over and hit them, then they all can go in this place where it's easier for them to flow. So the tomato pieces are randomly arranged, and then by moving it, by shaking it, we give them some kind of order, and that helps them to move out of the bottle.
And I'm assuming the difference between this and one of those red things that you see in every restaurant is that there's air pressure inside, and when we squeeze,
well,
shove it out.
The reason why it's hard to get a glass bottle of ketchup is that they hardly manufacture these things. You can only see them in restaurants. It's because when they switched to the squeeze bottles, the sale of ketchup went up tremendously because people are really sick of waiting for ketchup to come out. But when you squeeze it, you can totally control how it comes out.
All right, Anissa Ramirez, the science of ketchup explained. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can watch full episodes of SciTech Now on demand and on WPSU's YouTube channel. I'm Mike Zeman. Thanks for watching.
Funding for this program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Sue and Edgar Wachenheim III, and contributions to this station.